Okay, I've got 6 o'clock, so I'm going to call to order the Village of Belleville Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, October 9th. You don't mind doing roll call?
Yep. Chair Kaczmarski seems to be absent. Mike Service.
Here.
Gary Ziegler.
Here.
Jeff Larson.
Here.
Jared Wells.
Here.
Barry Enlow.
Here.
Jerry Butts.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Beautiful. Assuming the meeting was posted.
It was.
8. So next is public participation. Public participation allows citizens to be heard on any agenda and non-agenda item. The public may also comment during the public participation section of each item. The Planning Commission shall make no decisions or consideration of action of citizen comments for items not on the agenda except to refer the matter to the village staff for administrative consideration or to schedule the matter for Planning Commission consideration at a later date. Is there anyone who would like to speak on a non-agenda item? All right, next, consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine in nature and will be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a commission member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered as the first item after approval of the consent agenda, which is the September 11th, 2024 Plan Commission meeting minutes. I have a motion.
This is 25th on the agenda.
Oh, I'm looking at the,
Oh, I didn't update that. That's my fault.
sorry.
It is the 25th on the agenda.
Okay, so it's the September.
That's the vote sheets, incorrect.
I'll move we approve the consent agenda. Second.
Okay, motion by Gary, seconded by Mike. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? That passes. Chair report, I don't have anything. I think Vance has joined yet, staff. Ian, anything from you?
Staff has nothing at this time.
Aaron, okay. Next item is new business. Discuss and consider the site plan application for 1917 garage at 107 West Main Street. Conversation on this.
I will turn it over if you guys want to share anything about
Sure.
your application, and then
Yeah. Greg Arndorfer, Angus Young, project manager on this project. So we're proposing changing the use of this to a bar, restaurant, brew pub. We've submitted our site plan, lighting plan. I've replied, I believe, to all of Kevin's questions. And I'm prepared to discuss any in further detail that you'd like to. I know a couple of things to note. We are proposing that we get a waiver on on-site parking. This project, we're maintaining all of the hardscape that already exists on the site. And we, from the parking requirements, we'd be required to provide 50 parking stalls, I believe it was, which would be the entire size of our site. So obviously that will not work in our use. And we are additionally seeking a waiver on landscaping with all of the hardscape set to remain. We'll provide native grasses and ground cover at the back of the site approaching the river. And that is the only existing green areas that we have. We will additionally have potted planters spaced throughout our patio. So our goal today is to achieve conditional approval pending our conditional use approval application. And we also know there were some comments on our lighting plan. We're going to revise the lighting plan to not exceed the 0.5 foot candles on our west property line. On the east property line, we are in agreement with the existing business, the Llama, on using some of their green space as well for any overflow seating or activity areas associated with this. This business will allow food carry-ins, and so we're really trying to work with all the neighboring restaurants and businesses.
from the commission at all? Any additional comments?
I don't know. I just got a couple questions, but.
I mean, 4 or 5 pages of letters here, so I guess Kevin, have your concerns been met now,
I
or?
mean, the concerns that I think they've addressed is they're going to be done, so.
Okay.
You know, they need to update the plans, you know, I would request, I would think that the village, they get something in writing with the neighboring property owner for lighting, so that, you know, property changes hands, you know, just a handshake deal now and doesn't create problems in the future. The parking, obviously, they're going through a variance for, those are just items that need to be, it would have to be taken care of approved by the village prior to. Otherwise, my comments were very minor, and like Greg said, he sent me a response on most of them today. I think he addressed basically the maintenance. And there's gonna be an access easement on the west side of the property between those two. Care driveway created, that's where dumpsters will be accessed to push out, I understand, and everything.
Dumpsters will be able to be pulled out of the screening, but then the truck will be able to access it now.
And then they're creating an easement, I understand, as well for the village to get down to the dam gates as they use right now and everything as well. So, you know, those items haven't been done yet, but I mean, condition that those get done, I mean, I think they've addressed what they're planning to do.
Mr. Chairman,
Go for it, Corey.
Corey Anderson, General Engineering, excuse me, zoning administrator. So we feel this is it's in the BG zoning district, downtown district. So in our opinion, you know, the outdoor entertainment requires a conditional use permit, which I understand is they've applied for, but that's not on the agenda tonight. So that'll have to come back in front of the planning commission. And then the parking obviously is a discussion item that the planning commission will have to discuss. And then, but I think as far as noise, because they're going to have or proposing outdoor entertainment, you know, that's something we can look at in the conditional use permit process. Signage, there was some discussion on signage, but that can be addressed through that through a building permit. There is requirements in the downtown district as far as signage requirements, and also in the general zoning ordinance for signage requirements.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission?
According to your recommendation was to not approve this initially, correct?
Yeah, the parking is the biggest issue. They provide
Yeah. Right.
no parking spaces. The ordinance does allow them to provide parking on another property that they have ownership in, but it has to be within 400 feet. And as far as I can tell, nothing was proposed for that. So as far as the variance, Greg, I think you were applying for the fence variance. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was our intention, to not enclose the patio with the fence. Given that the business is going to strive off of carrying food items, that we wanted it open and inviting to all the neighboring restaurants.
And there is a fence along the shoreline side, right?
We have a guardrail fence all along the water, just to protect water access from any patrons of the restaurant. And there will be a gate in there to maintain access to the dam for village maintenance.
So would you be applying for a beer garden? Because if you're gonna sell alcohol back there, you'd have to have a fence, I believe, won't you?
Yep, so that's the variance.
Oh, okay.
Seeking on the fencing.
Not have a fence
Yep.
at all.
And fence on the sides, fence on the back to the water.
Yeah, that.
Protecting the water, there's a existing chain fence on west.
Can we have, hold on, I'm trying to hear his explanation. You guys are I can't hear.
Um,
Sorry.
yeah, there's an existing chain fence on the west property line of the neighbors, and then we'd be providing a guardrail to prevent any
On
water
the
access.
north, yeah.
And then given that this patio is not located up on the street front, we feel it's separated enough from the right of way.
So there is a fence on the west side as well, so it'd literally just be open on the east side.
There'd be an opening essentially at the back of the alley between the building and the alley. And then there's that existing fence on the west line, a new proposed fence on the north property line, preventing any water access. And then our next door neighbor, Lama, who we are working together with, would be open to their greenery space.
Gotcha.
That's not, I mean, that's not, it kind of is, but isn't what we're talking about right now. The basically a shared beer garden between a license that, or a premise that is licensed and a premise that is not licensed is not going to fly. So that's a problem, however that gets solved or doesn't. The fence is the height of the fence and the style of the fence is entirely a ordinance issue on our end, which a variance may very well take care of. That has to go through Board of Appeals, but the fact that it needs to be entirely enclosed is a state statute thing. If you're going to be serving alcohol, it's not an ordinance thing. So we can be more restrictive, but not less restrictive than the state statute. So that in itself would be a problem. And I don't know how that gets fixed. I'm just pointing out not any answers, I guess. I guess I will ask my questions now if it's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
So the fence that you're going to have up by the dam, I just want to make sure there's going to be dam access 24/7. I realize we have the easement, but if it's only like during business hours, we can get into the fence. That's not going to work because a lot of times we get storms there overnight. So if we need to do something with the dam, we need to get in there.
Yeah, our intention was to have a lockable gate and we could provide keys as needed to the door.
Okay, however that works. I just want to make sure. And then as far as the parking, so if you read directly by the use on the table, that's correct, but that section starts off with the heading, the number of parking spaces required for newly created parking lots. And this is not going to be a newly created parking lot. There's no parking lot being created. Another thing I point out is we have ample down-street parking with the exception of if there's an event going on in Library Park like tonight, or, Fridays with fish fry, Borland's. Otherwise, this place is wide open. And Johnny will affect that, I'm sure, to some extent, as things stabilize. But I think not having enough downtown parking is much better than the alternative of probably rather have alternative of not having a vibrant downtown. So that's my 2 cents anyway.
One question, what are your planned hours of operation? Tentatively.
Same as we do in POI and our Evansville location. So we're more of a daytime place. So weeknights would be, 4 to 8 p.m. Saturday, 11 to 8 p.m. Nothing past 8 or 9 o'clock.
Yeah, and I think really where I was going with that is just, I think some of the concerns, and I don't want to prefacing some of the questions from the businesses, but that's the competition for parking spaces during the week, right? Is businesses that are going to be operating down here, and it doesn't sound like there will be a little bit of overlap there, because if you're not opening until 4, I hope they're very busy if this works out the way it does, but I don't think we're going to be coming down at 3, waiting in their cars to get in. Just generally, it's 4 o'clock would be, so there would be some overlap with local businesses, but I think it's
And then another thing about
not a huge deal, basically.
yeah, because this area is in the adopted downtown design district area, you can use on-street parking to satisfy the requirements. And there is the waiver in lieu of going through the variance process, the waiver, which basically says that they have to negotiate with the planning commission having to do with the parking. So it is up to planning commission.
Judy, did you have a question? You had a question?
Yeah, I have a couple of them. I'd like, first of all, to remind everybody, and I'm looking here, other than Mr. Enlow, Gary Ziegler, the library was required to have 75 stuff. The new library. And they have nowhere near 75 stalls. But in time, they don't have 75 people or vehicles in there unless you have an event in the park like tonight, you know, and that happens once a year or so. So that's why I was wondering about the 50 stalls, because I'm going, you know, I don't know. And I agree with Ian, there's plenty of parking downtown. The second one I have concerns the DOT restructure of the highway out front here. Because there is going to be no change in underground utilities, if I read this correctly. Is that correct?
For the,
For
DOT or for their plan?
for their plan. Now, what about DOT?
The village is planning to work with DOT and probably upgrade ours. Their plan is to add right now, an upsized water service. So they're planning to work with DOT to get a permit and add a larger water service that they need for their business.
Okay, I'm just curious because I'm going, that's going to take place. And I think that you guys are going to be open before DOT comes through and redoes the.
DOT's not coming until 2030,
2030.
Right, but they will be open by then.
next year, yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't take 6 years.
So, you know. Which then means that they would have to upgrade the water line prior to DOT's research.
Just like they did at Johnny O's.
Right, just like you did at Johnny O's. The next thing, the other question I had was about Plaza Building, if there was a previous or a barrier, because their back is a parking lot for the laundromat. They also own the laundromat, so there's parking back behind the building.
Behind this building is,
Behind the laundromat.
Behind the laundromat, which is
Okay.
on the same side as their building. The easement comes in, people.
Right, the easement's not affected.
No, but when you talk about parking and it's people come in down through the easement, people would be parking behind the laundromat if there's no parking during the day.
I wouldn't think that people would think to park back there. I mean, maybe they would, but.
I think it can be handled with signs and things that it's for customer parking.
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, I think it can be addressed.
Okay,
I do.
We could sign that, right?
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, I think it can be.
People park back there now when they go to Borland's or whatever. So yeah, it's
I
nothing.
mean, I think it can be addressed. There'll be probably some pains and.
Yeah.
But I think it's.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, questions or comments?
Oh, I do, but if Sherry wants to.
Oh, sorry.
I do have a question about the garbage.
Okay, sure.
Is it intended that the garbage trucks will come into the alleyway to pick up, or are you going to push out to the road? I would have concerns about the truck going onto that shared driveway.
I think the current plan, again, we're planning on a small rolling dumpster. I don't know where they're gonna stop, right? So today, a lot of the deliveries that are made kind of pull in front of our building into that open area that's right in front of the garage. And so I don't know if exactly I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, caution it, because if there's going to be a fence that has to be put up, and when cars are back there, there isn't much room for turnaround or
Yeah.
anything back there.
Yeah, we
Aside from
are,
the usage of a garbage truck traveling on a regular.
we aren't envisioning going back to use that as a turnaround for any of the operation, including the garbage, for any of our property. Yeah. Yep. And yeah, operationally, the dumpster can be wheeled and if it's street facing.
And at our other property in Evansville, it's tucked up against the building, and then they park in between businesses and they wheel the dumpsters to where the truck is, and then they dump it. So it's more about their convenience than the plan that we have.
It's usually those that are a front load, right? So yeah, they'd have to either wheel it out to the street in front of the truck, because those aren't side load like the
Yeah,
normal recycling and garbage pickup is, so.
yeah, just be 3 yards.
Yeah, a small one, yeah.
So I'm guessing that they would park in the street right in front of the building.
Go
leave
get
them
it,
out,
yeah.
do them. I don't think they're gonna wanna pull that big truck in there.
Be a tough,
That would be a tough bet.
cars are tough enough getting back there sometimes.
Did you have a question?
Oh, I guess I had more questions about the separation by the fences. And I understand that there'll be a gate or something, but what is the gate gonna go to lock? What would it go against? Because my understanding is the one building is gonna be removed, or is it not?
Yeah,
The one in the back?
the
So that'll be
existing
all-
garage in the back would be removed down to the slab on grade.
So if you have a fence that goes all the way to her property line, how will she have access to be able to get onto the other side of her fence? If you,
Down
but,
around the
right,
backside.
she,
Yeah,
but there is no access from her fence through. So that's the question is that, are you
So-
putting a fence all the way up to her fence line? And it's going to be locked, so she won't be able to access the front of her.
Yeah, we're not trying to not allow you access there. So by all means, we can, again, whether it's you have a key to that same lock that the village has would be fine from our standpoint. I mean, and certainly that's part of that access, you know, how we use that space all the way along back to the water, both on your property and our property is something we want to talk about in that easement.
And I think it's all doable. It's
Yeah.
just something to put out there,
Yeah.
just that it
Yeah.
needs to probably be discussed at some.
We certainly can, make that
Yeah.
accessible from here. And I'm sure the village probably wants it locked though, or maybe from a safety standpoint.
Yeah, well, it sounds like state statute's gonna require a fence.
You wouldn't run a beer garden, but I guess follow-up question for that, and you guys wouldn't be selling liquor, it'd just be beer.
No, just here.
Okay, I think I might have an idea for the thing not to, okay.
You have questions?
Yeah, sure. I have questions on the beer garden part of that. Is this adopted?
Yes.
Conditional use permit business?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Okay. I don't know how you're gonna get a variance on that. You know, in this ordinance, it says that the purpose of the attractive wall, permanent fence or barrier in the beer garden area is to prohibit and restrict the ease in which alcoholic beverages may be passed from within the beer garden area to anyone outside the beer garden area. It's pretty cut and dry. You have to have a barrier. Your handicap ramp in the back, I don't understand. It's that, sorry. I should have told my wife I was coming here. She probably thinks I'm whatever. What's the handicap access into the building? Is it handicap accessible from the front?
yeah, you can go right.
And so then it's handicap accessible from the ramp in the back on the west?
Yeah, the ramp is away onto the deck and from the deck down into the back patio space.
So what's the elevation change on the deck to the building then? That's gonna be steps up to the deck inside the building? So I don't understand.
No, the slab, the way the slab is currently is you're up at the elevation you're at the sidewalk, and as that carries back,
Drops.
there's the drop of around 2 feet at the back of the building. So that deck would be carried out at the level of the floor slab. So it'd be about 2 feet above the back patio space.
So a wheelchair will be able to get to the deck from the inside?
Yeah, you can go right through the front doors and
Okay,
access.
well, that's gonna be huge for you guys. Because the access between the outdoor area and the building shall not be the sole handicap accessible access, so you'll probably have to fence off your handicap access. Regardless. And it also says that your beer garden shall be attached to the main business premises, and access to the outdoor premises shall, it's an unambiguous word, only be allowed through the main building. Now, this is a conditional use permit. So you have an area variance, a use variance, or a hardship variance. And a hardship variance has nothing to do with money. All right? You have the area, you have the use, and there's no hardship because you have the ability to construct the fence. Now, how tall? I mean, I don't know. Seems like there's been some scalpel to the ordinance. Most of those are, how tall does a fence have to be so that you can't prohibit access out? How narrow do the slats have to be for a beer not to be able to pass? It's your ordinance. And I don't think you can, under a conditional use in Act 67, I don't think you can. But I'd like that to be addressed. And I don't know, that's this whole business with the llama, that's an entirely different business. I don't see how you can even cross out of into the adjacent property and be legal. But I'm not privy to the rest of the packet. I haven't seen the follow-up answers to the questions from the engineering firm. I haven't seen any follow-up questions to the zoning administrator. I have a question on how your mechanicals on the roof are going to be screened for the downtown design standards. I have a question on the meshed gate on the trash area. Are you going to be able to see those dumpsters through the mesh gate?
That's going to be a screening enclosure.
All right. Well, then your roof mechanicals, you show a deck. You don't show anything on the east view of the profile. You specified a railing, but within 10 feet of something, but that's not screening.
Mm-hmm.
That would be page 7 of the downtown design standards.
So that was a question we had for the commission tonight. Is I believe the way the downtown district standards are written is depending on where the RTUs are located on the roof, screening may be required. And we are sizing our steel platform to accommodate it. And our question is going to be, is it required based on where it's located on top of the building, or will it not be required?
Well, the village attorney has already spoken to that. He said that it's unambiguous and not negotiable, and basically said it's so simple that is if you can see it, it's a violation. So, if you can see it, it's a violation. And that's from adjacent yards, that's from the street, that's from anywhere. Now, your company wrote those rules.
Back in the day, I think, yeah.
It's a certain.
Got our name on it.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And I thought that they were sensible and reasonable and responsible at the time. But at the time, I didn't even put up a question. I don't think any of the people downtown put up a question. We just let you pass them through. So I'd like some of that answered. I'd like to know why this application was put forth by staff when it wasn't complete to begin with. But I guess that's been addressed, and common people aren't allowed to see how that was addressed. But so those are some of my issues. But I think that. Okay, I'll ask another thing. When we came in here for Johnny O's, there was a question on parking, and they did this very simple perimeter parking, which came up with 13. You weren't here, Tim, and your brother was. And there was a question, Corey, about how that was figured. And we didn't go with that. We went with the number of seats, or we didn't have to count the kitchen, or we didn't have to count the bar, and came up with some number that was significantly less. So I get 50 is a very astounding number. But if half the building is seating and bar, then you're down to 25. Your building sat empty for over a year. State statutes and the legislature says you need to bring it into zoning compliance. They're explicit about that. But regardless, like I told you, Tim, that's just how it is. You got a very interesting and pretty looking back. I think that, you need to have, fences up appropriately or walls. Or, hey, if you would like to go with a chain and a decorative chain, but I'm not really sure how that works what do you have like at picnic where you have double chain and 7 feet apart so that you can't pass, so to prohibit that. I don't know how that would be achieved. But, wow, how many seats are out back?
The seating out back is to be determined.
To be determined, you represent 190 seats. Your plan tonight before you shows 190 seats. How is it that you're the architect and you don't know that?
The amount of seats out there is going to be dependent on the furniture selections.
Well, fine, your plan shows in your decking area, 15 8-tops. It shows 8 4-tops. It shows 8 Adirondack chairs. It shows 30 seats up on the deck.
You're referencing
I
our
counted.
conceptual rendering?
I'm counting what you presented tonight for this board as to what your plan is, what your outdoor plan is. This is what's in this paperwork.
You're referencing our conceptual renderings for the seating? We didn't have a furniture plan submitted.
It's in the packet.
Because those are conceptual, that it's to be determined what capacity.
Nowhere in your document does it say conceptual. Am I wrong? You guys looked at your packet? Zoomed in? Corey?
Images say conceptual design on them.
So this was provided early on. We had a meeting with the village early on to help to understand what the concept was. They have no idea whether that was included in the packet tonight or not.
Everything I see says conceptual design on their renderings.
Yeah. So again, we
Clear letters,
tried to present where the current status was at that point. We haven't really done the outside, all of the furniture seating, as Greg has said, because we are waiting to see that we've got a site, approval.
All right. You can see it's a fair question, Tim.
Yeah.
Oh. And that's what, like you and I have talked in the past. These things here tonight are really designed so you can kick it around and maybe get a good plan.
Yeah, that's what we want. That's why we're here.
And like I've said to you, done right. Want it done right. But I don't see how you can get around not having containment in a beer garden. So.
But the Llama isn't a licensed establishment right now, but it's possible that if the Llama made the decision to get I forget what class beer license, which we have on the flyout, if that's possible, if like class B, if that's possible, then they would both be licensed establishments and you could possibly.
I think that you're baloney.
But then would you have to enclose basically the llama with it maybe or
It would,
something?
the beer garden itself would have to be enclosed. That's not a thing we could do anything about. That has to be enclosed, but it might be able to be both areas and not just one. So if you wanted to include the Llama area as well, that might be a road to it.
So respectfully, it says the beer garden shall be attached to the main business. Yes, they can both have beer gardens, but they would have to be separated and access only through the main business out into the
If they're both
backyard.
licensed establishments.
Doesn't matter if they're both licensed establishments. Go down to Madison, go down to any other
You
city.
need to go down
When they're
Madison and
side
do
by
this for over a
side.
decade, man. I'm telling you that they're both licensed establishments. If it's possible by the DOR standards, we have to check.
Obviously.
But if they're both licensed establishments, they would both be the main licensed establishment.
You've been
So-
doing this over a decade?
Yes, I have.
I didn't know that. I thought you were doing rehab in Beloit,
What?
rehabbing buildings or something.
I
in
did do
Beloit.
that for a while, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, but if they're both licensed establishments and there's an entrance in both of them to one enclosed beer garden that you guys have an agreement together that, I mean, that might fly.
We'll have to reach out to the DOR.
I don't
for
know.
those
I'm
kind
just
of
saying that
specific
might fly.
insurance.
Other than that, I think it looks cool.
Any other questions from the commission?
I think my only one, yeah, based on when we wrote that beer garden ordinance, I think you would have to be required to have a fence. I don't know if that's something that can even go to the Board of Appeals for a variance or not, so.
Send them state.
Yeah,
Was, when I read through the packet, there was an item about, I think it was the sewer line access. Was that resolved?
I think I just made note that there's a sewer. They're not planning any buildings over top of it or anything. They just got it noted. One of the questions they had was they've got a deck. So the old sewer agreement from, correct me if I'm wrong, like the fifties or something, whatever it was. There is no width defined on it. Just says along the sewer line for a lot of those businesses back there. So they had asked me what a typical easement width would be, and I said, well, maybe 20 feet, 10 feet on each side. Technically, they need to get the deck, so it's not in the easement at all. They were asking if it could be 16 feet, which based on the depths, it really can. Most of that, if anything were to ever happen, it's gonna be lined underground. You could still get down to it, so I was reasonably comfortable with what they had shown.
But yeah, I guess I'll say regarding the enclosure, we haven't formally applied for a variance on it, but we're just approaching the conversation tonight. We're gonna follow up with that, and based on what we're hearing, I think we're gonna see with the enclosure.
I think one of the things, the village has a long-term plan. I mean, at least some early discussions, right? How do we best make use of that entire area back along there? And, I think the festival district idea, which kind of, if you think about what is going on in other communities very close to Belleville that has lots of activity all weekend long. Allowing some autonomy to be able to walk through the festival district. So we've kind of started that process. That concept would play into this area back along here being the most successful for the village. I understand maybe today those rules aren't written that way, and I don't know whether they can be changed or not. I know the state of Minnesota came up with new rules for something called social districts, and they allowed individual communities to identify how those social districts were enforced. And what it allowed was people to be able to go into multiple businesses with an acknowledged receipt from that business. So you'd walk into Hop Garden and you'd get a beer there, and then you could walk down within the festival district to walk down to J&M's or to Borland's or vice versa, and probably more likely vice versa here, because we're encouraging people from Borland's to grab their fish and come down, or people, Johnny Oates to come up and deliver pizza up there, or vice versa, right? So that concept of how we make this whole area the most successful needs to be addressed in a way that isn't unfriendly in terms of fencing and all of those things. So it feels like, and especially if it's got to be an 8-foot high opaque fence, because if you want to talk about going up to Madison, I go up to Madison all the time. There's lots of places people are walking around with beers, and I go up to Belleville. There's lots of people walking around with beers, and I don't see a whole lot of risk that people are sneaking beers to 12-year-olds. I just don't. Do we have to monitor it? Absolutely. Do we have to enforce the rules that accommodate that? Yes. Having said that, we're missing out on an opportunity for Belleville if we don't write rules or create a process that allow businesses to be successful down here. And so, to me, some of those rules, and you've started to go that way at the festival district. I think that concept can be used in some way. You know, I don't know. That's my, you know.
I don't disagree with you, but the problem is our ordinances are written the way they are right now. So we'd have to change an ordinance probably or create a new ordinance.
Well, and ultimately that's maybe what I'm asking the people that have the ability to affect change to think about how we can do that in a way that makes all of this area and probably down through the, you know, if we want to make the depot successful and all of that area, we should accommodate access to all that in a way that lets people use it the way they use it today, right? I mean, we see it in lots of places that aren't sitting behind that 8-foot high fence.
In Belleville, we just had a conditional use permit for the whole park area behind the mill. And then we posted signs saying no alcohol beyond this point. And if we see that, we enforce it. Can't always be at every gate every time. But I think people comply pretty well. We've been there, 8-9 years now and haven't had any problems there. But there's no way we could fence that whole area. We just haven't had problems.
I'll be the first to admit, I haven't been to the Evansville one yet, but do you have a beer garden or a patio down there? And is that fenced in down there or?
Not completely. So in Evansville, we have a smaller area. And then we also rent the neighbors' buildings outside area. And the front has gates to the main street, but they're never, you don't usually shut them. We always have them open. But the backside is to the alley and the backside is completely open. And Evansville hasn't had any problem with that. And we rent the neighbors' ground for that, so we haven't had any issues with anybody there either. It's pretty open.
So, yeah. I think, Tim, though, you know, we talked about that. I've been up to Oshkosh, like you talked about in Oshkosh. The difference is that those districts are on the public right of way. They're not in the back. They're delineated on the public right of way, which is what you can control, public right of way. But private property in the back, they're not free range. You know, and they're fenced, those beer gardens up in Oshkosh. And I know because I went there, I've seen it with my own eyes. I don't know what they're doing in Minnesota, but I highly doubt that it's carry your beer anywhere you want downtown, front and back. And that just doesn't seem sensible. I know that's what you want. Is it really reasonable? Sure, Paola is Paola. It's what it is. You're fortunate to be in a township that doesn't have a lot of regulation. But getting into municipalities, I don't see that. I don't think anybody's asking for an 8-foot fence. Typically, and what this ordinance used to be was a 6-foot fence. Nobody ever said it was solid. And there's plenty of places you drive around. They have decorative fencing. And it looks nice. And yeah, you know, I guess that's I guess all I really have to say about that. Other than I don't know if you can aspire to change the ordinances, but I don't know how many legislators you're going to have that are going to change the other. So maybe it'd be best to look on the short term. And if this property is only going to make it off of the warm months and drinking out back, I don't know what kind of business model that is. I see you being hugely successful on the inside, just like I've seen you being hugely successful at Johnny O's. I mean, nature abhors a vacuum. This town has a vacuum. You're providing, and they're gonna come, and your established clientele is gonna come down from Paoli. It's gonna be good. But I don't think you're gonna live and die on whether or not you can free range like all around in back. I don't find it sensible. I don't find it being responsible or reasonable. And on that, we'll disagree. But, you know, that's just one person's opinion.
To me, it's more about accommodating the people that will want to use that. And however they want to use that, we should strive to find a way within the rules. Again, I think the festival district is a great step to allow for some kind of enforcement for a period of time. I don't know what that period of time is. Today, it's based on every time there's a festival, but it could be a festival season. Could be a period of time during the year that allowed some kind of autonomy between businesses.
Again, that's in the front. Our festival district is in what you control in the right of way. The village doesn't have anything in the back.
Actually, the festival district is pretty large. It includes community park. It goes all the way back to the Legion from the park.
Right.
Does include basically from the river all the way south also.
All public space.
So
I guess if I may, if you realistically think about the property, the main access is gonna be through the front of the garage, the back. People may walk down that alleyway to get to the back, but that's a long space from the front of the building to the back, so I don't see that as a big issue. Deb at the Llama and I know each other way back, and she would like to be a part of what we have going. And so it would be very, it would be very tough for her to have a little fence between our spot. It would be great if she's planning on building a bigger deck back there, being open more hours for food. So I could just see, food coming out of her place, food coming out of our place. Everybody's just sitting back there enjoying the river. The next door property, if he's not open to having people crossing his property, I'm fine with putting some sort of a small fence there. I don't have a problem with that. But we would like to work with Johnny O's Pizza. I mean, we do barbecue. We do great barbecue, but I'd like to have a variety of food come over. I'd like to have Johnny O's Pizzas come over. I'd like to have Orland's fish fries come over. So having all that open in the back, I think would be a neat thing for the town. I think that would bring more people in. And I don't really see people going from the back to the street. There's no really way to do it. And if it is, it's kind of out of the way. So I don't know, it just seems like it's a pretty natural secluded area back there.
Was that Judy?
It's true. You'd have to go through the building to come to the street level, unless you swim the river. Because the river doesn't go all the way.
So what is it we need? What is it we're trying to accomplish today, Ian?
So they're looking for approval on their site plan tonight.
So we can put contingencies on it.
Yes.
So I'll ask this question to commission. Does anybody have any concerns relative to parking? I got parking and fencing are the big two things, right? I think those are the two issues at play, but does anybody have concerns about the parking issue? I mean, I do, but I think, again, the hours of operation mitigate that quite a bit to me.
Is there going to be any parking? I saw 8 potential, but those aren't going to be utilized at all. So no parking.
right, because that will be the patio on the back.
And we do have in the front of that building right now, it's a ramp, right? Like it's not curb and gutter. So theoretically, could we put forced curb and gutter there that would
I
result
mentioned
one or
that,
two spots there?
They came back and said, you guys can clarify, but basically that others use that for entrance with the ramp as it is or
So if
something.
you spend any time down there during the day, delivery trucks going to J&M's and Borland park right in that spot, otherwise they're in the road. There's nobody parks there because it's not a parking spot.
Right, right.
So they pull in there and it's a big, they gotta have their bigger trucks till they get in there. So it's used constantly by delivery trucks for the other businesses. I just think it would be a bad idea. Otherwise, you're gonna have trucks double parked in downtown.
Would there be a way to sign it? Allow it to be parking, a delivery period or something,
Drop off.
you
You could have a loading
know,
zone.
something like that allowed then parking outside of hours,
At the end of the day, you're gonna have to work with DOT and make sure everything is kosher. It's in there right away, obviously, but I would think, yeah, you could do that. Or I was thinking like a spot for a handicap. I didn't know where the nearest handicap parking stall was.
Yeah.
And I had to look up and down the street, so I didn't know where the nearest one was.
There's a proposal to put one, at least police committee has talked about putting one right in front of the old bakery, so,
Just keep in mind, it is quite dangerous coming out of. the
yeah.
And the only reason I think it's worked up to this time is because there isn't parking to the left. And if you put parking there, I think there's gonna be more, could be potentially more.
Yeah, that alley's more dangerous than J and M's alley, I think, so,
It's used a lot.
yeah.
Or I'm sure there's an option you could shrink the ramp to some degree to create a loading zone parking spot also.
Yeah, I'm just throwing out ideas. I'm not
That's
saying it's gonna solve the
the
problem.
hand truck up.
We're not magically gonna create 50 spots out front of the buildings.
Other villages will put, when there's alleys like that, they'll put signs on both sides that you cannot do SUV. parking. And so it limits the size of vehicle that's there, so that when people are trying to get out and be able to see around, they don't have a big front SUVs parked there.
So general, I don't.
Is it prohibited? I guess that's probably the bigger, is it prohibitive that we don't have 50 stalls of parking? I mean, I don't know.
Like, in my opinion, no, because we don't have 50 stalls of parking right now. So.
That is unreasonable, like.
Yeah,
I mean, for any downtown business, you're not gonna be able to accommodate that. And right now, I mean, it's not very busy. There is, like, if you come down here,
sure.
5, 6, there's a lot of parking spots. In the future, though, if you revitalize the area, would that be a problem? I don't know.
There's way people find places to park.
Yeah.
Well, and ultimately,
They'll walk.
yeah, I mean,
It'd be a good problem to have.
it's a good problem to have, but it's also like, I think if it gets to a point where you have to solve it, then it's a different conversation.
The one thing I guess I'd mention, and this is looking quick here, is the planned DOT project in 2030, which is down the road a ways and stuff, though. They're gonna be doing handicap ramps and everything. So at that time, the village could look at doing something, but if everything's going, it might be nice to have some kind of shift some of these parking stalls a little bit or something to make a nice crosswalk at Green Street or something. Or you're gonna have people kind of running across the street there to Johnny O's in this place or whatever. So
Yeah.
that might be more down the road, more just.
I suspect
something.
we're gonna redo that entirely because it's a hot mess right now across in multiple places on Main Street. Especially if we've got businesses that are more active. It's gonna make a lot more sense to do some stuff.
So if it makes sense to shift some of those parking stalls, it may make that loading zone a little bit smaller, but make an area for, and I don't know how it would line up. I mean, that's kind of down the road. I'm more just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any issues as long as all the issues in the MSA and the GEC letter are addressed. I'm fine with it, I think, so.
Yeah, I think, go ahead, I'm sorry.
What type of access is required to the dam? Just to get people through there in order to control the gates?
Yeah, I think it's more
basically?
emergency.
Those are controls, the flow controls. So you open and close the dam by the,
There's no requirement to get like machinery back there or anything, right? Just.
I mean, maybe someday if there's a real big problem, but as of right now.
Every time we've done anything, the dam, it's been from the other side, I think.
It's
It's from the park side, so.
Totally possible.
Which would make sense. I mean, if you're bringing in a train or something, or.
So what about the fencing issue? Anybody have questions, comments? Again, I don't know that we have to immediately solve for that, but
I'm not sure, I don't know what the state's statutes are, but,
Do we have any latitude? I don't know.
looking at, Wisconsin brewing aerial and having been there, I think there's a 6-foot fence. And it's, your, they call those little vertical slats or whatever, it's, you can see through it.
That's for their storage space in the back.
They also have it, in the front by the parking lot, that you have to walk through the gate in order to get basically into the facility.
Yeah, metal gate there. or-
Not a 6-foot fence. I thought it was like a 3-foot gate.
Maybe it is. I was looking at aerial. It's been a long time since I've been there.
I think the back is screened for their stuff, but as you enter, it's a 3-4 foot gate that's open all the time.
So if we required a fence, let's just say hypothetically, how would that impact your concept though? Would that prohibit you from doing something? Because from the sounds of it, you want to really incorporate other businesses and that would preclude a lot of that from happening.
We ultimately think we're going to be successful. We think we can, I think, again, we're trying to build the best project we can for Belleville.
And again, realistically, if you think about that property, if you can't get there from the front unless you go through a business, or you go around a couple alleyways. And I think as long as we get started with having Deb at the Llama be part of what we're, trying to do, we can show the concept that the whole idea is that eventually that whole riverfront there becomes open to the businesses along Main Street and they have back access to that. And it becomes just this, if you think about Memorial Union along the lake, all those businesses could enjoy that. So I think that's the ultimate goal, would be to see that happen and we all work together to keep a lot of people downtown.
Well, as far as food delivery, going through the front like you're required in a beer garden doesn't hamper delivery of food from any of your associated businesses in downtown. To do what's required doesn't hamper that delivery.
But
It may not be in the manner that you prefer or your idea, but just because you have an idea doesn't mean it's legal.
Well, I'd like to be able to be open between the Llama and us so that our customers could intermingle back there.
Yeah, I think,
Well, if the law is such that they have to be through the main establishment and it's fenced, no, I don't know.
I think we'd be able to provide gates as long as we could at least provide gates at a minimum. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the beer garden was amended to not require the only entrance and exit through the building. That's part of the zoning.
I don't know, I'm reading from the one that was last month, so.
My understanding, because if we look right at Johnny O's, who just built his, has a gate on the outside in and out as well. Most of the ones I believe even around have some sort of gate on the outside. It's not just through the main entrance. So I'm pretty sure that's part of, the allowance.
But you don't go in and through the gate. The gate's there and has to open outward for EMS or anyone that would have to access. All the beer gardens are supposed to have a gate that have a fence. On the prior ordinance, and it's in here somewhere.
If you look at, I have to double check with other municipalities, and I'm certainly made a note to research, but like there are, I've been in New Glarus where they have a beer garden out behind, was it Toppler's? And walked right through the gate in the back with my kids. So there's certainly entrance allowed over there. Ours are similar to them. I'm not saying we're exactly New Glarus, but there's certainly not required to go straight through the main. Nobody, when I was out there, was going, most people were going through the side gate. So
Did you ever occur to you that might have been illegal?
no, I'm saying that New Glarus's rules might be different than ours. But I'm saying that the state statute doesn't necessarily prohibit that.
I don't know that.
And I would have to, and I, once again, I preclude all that with the fact that I need to reach out to DOR and do some own research before I can say for certain. These are all hypotheticals.
So
It's right here. It says, for beer gardens that utilize the attractive wall or permanent fence to surround the area, a gate or gates or exits shall be a minimum of 3 feet wide and be the same height as the beer garden.
Well, I think there are some issues that need to have a little further research, but I think for the most part,
And that's kind of where I was gonna go is, can we give you guys guidance to check with DOR, check with state
That's
statute?
not even the permit. We're looking for.
That's kind of,
Yeah,
right,
the-
so I guess that, but it impacts the concept, I think,
Yeah.
where I'm sensitive to that, and again, I think there's so many moving pieces of that I don't, I'm not opposed to the concept at all, but it's more a matter of that impacts what fencing would be required, if it's required, if, you know, if there could be changes to the ordinance to basically navigate some of that stuff. If state statutes allows it, if it opens it up to the llama, for example, if, you know, there's like a couple different questions there that I think still are outstanding, but I don't think those are prohibitive relative to the concept in general.
because there's some things here that are not in our control, like state law, or, you know.
Correct,
like this-
right,
these
right,
things, So.
right. Well, and some of those things are, I don't want to say navigable, but we need to figure out what the language and what the restrictions are. And we might have other solutions that we could propose for that.
That's a big question. I like the idea though, of supporting the other businesses, allowing them to bring their food onto your property. So by doing that, you would support them. I like that. Yeah, what can we do by statute or law or ordinance would be the big issue.
The contingency.
I was gonna,
Go for it.
I was gonna make a motion.
Go for it.
I'll make a
You're,
motion.
you're a chapter ahead of me, 'cause I'm
Okay.
trying to think about how to do it.
I'll make a motion that, Plan Commission approve the,
Same thing.
site plan for, 1917 garage at 107 West Main Street, contingent upon the items outlined in the September 30th, 2024 MSA letter and see a date on Corey's letter here, and the letter from GC and further research by staff on the beer garden and festival district
Fencing issue.
issues raised at this meeting.
Second.
Okay, motion by Gary, seconded by Mike. Discussion?
Got one question. Since I didn't see the original site plan that you supposedly offered, where is your north boundary line? Here at the river. How much space have you?
Space to the waterfront.
Right.
How much? Yeah, there's a retaining wall down there. I don't know that dimension immediately offhand.
We're on this
Right, the
side,
back of the garage, retaining wall.
we're on this side of that retaining wall.
So there's approximately 12, 15 feet between your property boundary line, the north line, and that retaining wall?
Property goes all the way.
I was saying, that's their
The
property.
property extends
That's what I'm
extends
trying to find out.
down where we're proposing our guardrail protecting it is set back.
Oh,
That type
that's
of
what I was
thing.
after. Okay. Because I was gonna suggest or an idea, you're talking about this festival project, that sounds good. If there was a sidewalk back there where people could walk at their leisure along the river and go to any business that's on Main Street without having to go through a security check, so so to speak. I think that would be ideal.
You apparently weren't at that meeting. We had
That meeting where that was
an
discussed.
extension of the bicycle path.
Right.
That might have been one of the most cantankerous meetings I've ever ventured.
Like I say, I didn't see your site plan, so I didn't know where your boundary was.
And then we could have people park in the park, walk the pretty bridge, get that dressed up, and they could walk anywhere downtown.
That was my next proposal, to park out there. So I'm sure you could park 50 vehicles there, without a doubt.
Yeah.
The only thing is, and I think you brought up the weather condition, you might not be doing this in the wintertime, but the rest of the time, when the weather's halfway decent and whatever, people, I think, would more welcome walking from the park to any establishment along there, without a doubt. That would solve your parking issue.
Your comments or questions, discussion items? Judy?
This is just a comment to Maren. Based on all the discussion tonight, Maren, is it possible to get the minutes and do a summary of what was discussed this evening?
Well, the video will be posted to YouTube by the end of the week, but minutes are not for summary discussion unless that I run into any legal contentious issues. Minutes are for what was done, not what was said. So,
Okay.
but the video will be up by the end of the week and anybody can view it.
Because I was under the impression that the committees and anything other than board meetings.
Plan commission and board meetings are both on YouTube.
Okay,
It's the only two. The two meetings.
we should let the public know that too.
But Facebook, it's on. So, yes.
We have a bunch of followers already. We're very popular.
Or unpopular as the case may be. Okay, so we got a motion by Gary, seconded by Mike to, I'm not gonna repeat the whole thing, but essentially to provisionally approve.
Contingent on items.
Contingent on items from GEC, items from MSA, and for more information relative to the festival district fencing and beer garden issues. So. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes.
Thank you. Go get your legislatures up, because I don't think we have the same social like they have, the one that was recently passed in Minnesota, so.
All right, I will entertain a motion
Don't move.
to adjourn. I'll clarify that since it's recorded. We got a motion by Larry, seconded by Jared. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned at
7:08 PM.